Hello there, and welcome to the Alberta Update, a first-hand look at what's happening in your province. I am your host, Bruce McAllister. Thank you for being with us today. We have a ton planned for you in this episode. Minister Rebecca Schultz will be by. Some changes on how water is being accessed by municipalities. Some big changes. We'll tell you more about that. We'll also have the Tourism Minister, Joseph Scow, stopping by. We'll cover all of the latest announcements in the province. But first, as we always try to, we say hello to the Premier to chat about some of the things Premier Danielle Smith has been up to. I know you've been very busy again. Good day, Premier.
Hello, Bruce.
Hey, let's start with this huge announcement from you and your health minister, Minister LaGrange, this week. You're going to reward healthcare providers that actually provide service to Albertans. It's part about accountability, but I think it's mostly about providing more and better service for Albertans. Tell us more about what you are doing and why.
I can tell you I've been studying healthcare reform for nearly 30 years now. And there are universal systems around the world that work. And there's a few things that they have in common. One is that they have a split between who the purchaser is, who the provider is, and who the evaluator is. That was part of our refocusing, is to do exactly that. But the second thing is to have local decision-making and activity-based funding. And that means essentially that those facilities that are able to perform more surgeries and treat more patients get more dollars. And so as they start doing more surgeries, they get more proficient at it. And then it reduces our wait times. It gives better patient care, and it allows for us to implement new innovations. And so there's been a lot of success in the universal systems that are around the world. And this will be the first time that it's been implemented at scale in Canada, with Alberta being the starting point. And I hope others follow suit, because where it has been tried, in other jurisdictions, they see a dramatic reduction in wait times, and that's exactly what we're going for.
Listen, you're getting a lot of feedback on this one, and just to put it in context for our viewers, you did a video, was 5 or 6 minutes long, something like that, that really explains this well. Premier, we're going to air that video in its entirety in a few minutes, so everybody can get a better handle on exactly what you're up to. But I want to cover some other ground. So let's go to this first. You were in Central Canada again this week. I know you've been talking with the other premiers and leaders around the country about reducing interprovincial trade barriers, but you're also in Quebec. And as much as we malign some of the things that Quebec gets in terms of deals with the Federation, we may have some commonalities there, and I suspect that's what you were discussing.
Yeah, we certainly do. I think that the new future state for Canada is that we're going to preserve as much of our trade relationship with the United States as we can, but we've got to do a whole lot more trading with each other, and we also have to find new markets. So I'll be going to Japan and South Korea in the coming couple of weeks to start expanding out our international trade. And going to Ontario and Quebec is all about making sure that we have new trade ties that we can form with Ontario and Quebec. So I think that you're seeing that all of the provinces are working towards tearing down those barriers, finding out new ways that we can source some of the key materials that we need, especially steel and aluminum. And I think that Quebec is going to be very key for us in that. But politically, they also happen to do a fair deal panel, very much along the lines of what we did in our province, to find ways to repair the Federation, to get Ottawa out of our business as provinces, to get the Federation working more like it was originally intended to. And I think that they're going to be an ally on many fronts, not only on the economic side, but also on the political side.
All right, listen, I want to ask you about the Federation, the federal government, the election campaign in just a minute. But first, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring this up. And you probably don't want to talk about it, but a lot of people are, so I'm going to ask you about it. Mark Carney made reference to you at a speech. I think he was in Victoria. He was talking at a campaign rally. His tone and manner weren't very becoming of a prime minister talking about a premier. A lot of people are saying, he should have been more respectful. You heard what he had to say. Is it just a case of another progressive man having a tough time with a strong conservative woman?
Certainly looked to me like that was the case. I mean, I I have always been very direct in my criticism of the federal government and in particular policies that are damaging to Alberta. I always try to keep it respectful. Sometimes I don't always express myself perfectly, but I thought I expressed myself perfectly well when I said that if the new prime minister wants to reset his relationship with Alberta, he's got to address the terrible policies that have caused us to lose investment and have our economy stall for 10 years. So I wasn't expecting that kind of response. I also know how hard I and Doug and all the other premiers have been working to fill the void left because of the lack of a functioning government at the federal level. We've been out of Parliament for over 110 days. We've got a prime minister who doesn't have a mandate, and we're right in the middle of a trade war with the United States. And so I would have expected a little bit more appreciation for all of the work that we have done through the Council of the Federation and through the premiers to work our contacts, to try to get a delay in the implementation of tariffs, to try to minimize the damage, and to try to make sure that we get an early renegotiation of the Canada-US Free Trade Agreement. So I would have hoped that would have been recognized. Sadly, it wasn't.
Exactly. Listen, I'll leave that one and ask you this on the federal election campaign. This is so imperative. The result of this will mean so much to the country, but the province of Alberta. And one of the things that former Prime Minister Stephen Harper said this week as he was introducing Pierre Poilievre, the Conservative candidate, at a rally of 15,000 people or so in Edmonton, was that Canadians shouldn't be looking to what U.S. President Donald Trump has done or is doing to Canada. They should be looking to what the Liberals have done to Canada in the last 10 years. What would you like Canadians and Albertans to focus on in this campaign?
No, I think there has to be a recognition that affordability and reliability when it comes to energy and food is absolutely job one for governing parties and for leaders. That we now have an inflation crisis, an affordability crisis. We have an energy security crisis, a food security crisis, and Canada is the solution. Unfortunately, we have an infrastructure that is not built out to allow for us to get to new markets. The federal government should be focusing on building more ports and more rail lines and more highways and more pipelines and more transmission lines. And instead, they've got policies in place that prevent all of that construction. And so part of what we've been asking for is for them to honor the outcome of the Supreme Court decision that said that their bill C-69, commonly called the No More Pipelines bill, would get out of the way of provincial jurisdiction. They did some token changes to it, but not in the spirit of what the Supreme Court told them. They continue to have damaging net zero regulations, from everything on cars to buildings to power systems. They have affirmed that they want to bring in emissions caps, which will act as production caps. I mean, all of these things are working directly opposite to making Canada an energy and food superpower. So I'm going to see what happens with the results of the election. I put 9 different issues on the table of terrible federal policy that has to be repealed to reset the relationship and get the country on the right track. And I'll be working for many months after the election is over to see if we can get those repealed. But now's the time to make a change. I believe, from what I've seen of all of the spirit that the premiers have of working together, we need a federal government who's going to be a partner in that, as opposed to standing in our way. And so that is what I would hope would happen after this next election.
Premier, thank you as always. Appreciate the time.
Thanks, Bruce.
There is our premier kicking off this episode of the Alberta Update. So much to discuss, and we've got much more ahead today. We're going to sit down and have a conversation with Environment Minister Rebecca Schultz. We're also going to have Joseph Scow, the Minister of Tourism, join us. First, though, the premier mentioned the healthcare announcement this week. Well, in her words, here is a video explaining how this policy will work and how it will benefit Albertans.
We've always done it this way. When it comes to your healthcare, that excuse keeps patients waiting, doctors frustrated, and costs skyrocketing. It's one of my biggest frustrations when it comes to our efforts to lower surgical wait times in Alberta. Yes, Alberta is moving forward. We're performing well over 10,000 more surgeries each year than we did in 2018-19, and that's good. But let's be honest, I know that's not good enough, and you know that's not good enough. No matter how much money we pour into the system, the improvements are too small, too slow, and too inconsistent, especially when it comes to surgery. The system isn't working, and I don't care that we've always done it this way. We need to make bold changes. We need to look at what top jurisdictions are doing around the world and implement reforms to improve your care. Albertans deserve surgical wait times that don't just marginally improve, but meet the medically recommended wait times for every single patient, because our population is growing rapidly and the needs of patients keeps growing with that. So the same old isn't going to cut it. Our front lines are doing everything they can, but the system is holding them back from making decisions that improve care. Our outdated system is driving away the very professionals we rely on. That's why today, I'm announcing that Alberta Health will modify our funding formula for scheduled surgery from global budgets to activity-based or patient-focused funding. That means funding will soon follow patients to drive more high-quality surgery for Albertans at lower costs. That's because we'll foster competition, so all medical centers, whether charter surgical facilities or hospitals, get rewarded for delivering results for patients. We will increase transparency, lower wait times, and attract more surgeons, just like we've seen in Europe and Australia who use this model. Allow me to explain. Right now, under global budgeting, our system works like this. The government generates revenue from taxpayers. Always important to remember, this money is yours, not the government's. Then via the provincial budget, Alberta Health receives billions of dollars and gives that money to Alberta Health Services to manage it. AHS then distributes a pot of money to all the various hospitals and publicly funded facilities based on expected outcomes. The problem here is hospitals miss their targets, and there's no accountability because they've already got the pot of money. In fact, hospitals will often stall on surgical procedures so they can use their global funding in another way. So even if a hospital promised to perform 300 surgeries, they may only deliver 100 with no accountability for administration. That is wrong. Global budgeting also limits our ability to leverage charter surgical facilities who can do routine procedures much faster and can often adopt new techniques faster than hospitals. There's no magic with these independent surgical facilities. They are groups of doctors who put up capital to build a facility and then perform simple, high-demand, scheduled surgeries paid for by public funds. Since they are smaller, collaborative local teams who do the same surgeries every day, they get incredibly good at simple hip, knee, eye, and other procedures, often performing 2 to 3 times more surgeries in the same block of surgical time as at a public hospital. We need to use them more to ensure cost certainty, but also because handling routine surgeries independently frees up capacity in our hospitals for more complex surgeries. The charter surgical facilities also help attract more surgeons to Alberta because they create more operating room space. Surgeons can perform more surgeries and then get paid more. These doctors often also work in our hospitals, so it's a win-win across the system. But the old top-down approach offers no incentive to do more for patients and limits our ability to direct dollars where they can get the best results. While the global budgeting model will still be used for small rural facilities and general admission and emergencies, it is not working for surgery in most of our busy hospitals where efficiency is a must. Here's the reality with global budgeting. There's no incentives to increase volume, no accountability, no cost predictability for taxpayers. The result? Long wait lists for scheduled procedures like we've seen across Canada. That's why we're switching to activity-based funding or patient-focused funding for surgery. First introduced in 1980 by Yale University's Dr. Robert Fetter, this model has been widely adopted in the US, Europe, and Australia. It's a simple 3-step process. 1. Turn common surgeries like knee, hip, back, eye, and other procedures into a product with clear fixed pricing. The pricing will change slightly depending on complexity and aftercare needs. 2. Facilities compete to deliver surgeries for patients. 3. Each facility is paid based on the number of surgeries performed. That's it. It's pay for results rather than black boxes of money with no incentive to improve. Australia is the gold standard for activity-based funding and has a similar system to us in Canada. They introduced activity-based funding in 1993 for surgery, and Australians saw a 57.3% decrease in wait times for urgent and semi-urgent surgery within 1 year. Other countries have seen outstanding results as well. That's because it's a bottom-up approach. rather than top-down, that incentivizes volume because funding is only delivered when the service is provided. Facility administration has to be accountable to deliver results and is motivated to use resources efficiently, or their funding dries up. If hospitals have idle operating room time, they will have to be creative, or they won't get funding. For example, if the hospital becomes more efficient with their scheduling and staffing to perform more services, great, they receive more funding. If they can't do it, administrators could rent idle operating room space to a group of doctors to increase funding. Or maybe charter surgical facilities can deliver more surgery. Then they get more funding. Either way, money follows patients, and every provider is motivated to increase volume by fostering competition. It's also more cost predictive for taxpayers with accountability for hospital managers and all providers. Of course, every surgery must meet the highest standards, and that's exactly what Acute Care Alberta will do through dedicated oversight. In fact, our experience, especially with charter surgical facilities, shows that care is very high quality. These teams perform routine surgeries daily, allowing them to perfect their craft and quickly adopt the latest research and techniques for faster, better outcomes. To review, with activity-based funding, there is built-in incentives to increase volume with high quality, cost predictability for taxpayers, accountability for all providers. Where this has been tried, the result is lower surgical wait times and higher quality care. Don't get me wrong, this change will be difficult, as is any change in a large system. But I will not sit around and not make change because of ideology or the way we've always done it. You deserve better. You deserve your surgery within medically approved times. Alberta will lead the way and get it done. Thanks for watching, and please share this video.
Well, there's lots more going on now with the Alberta government. It was a busy week in Edmonton. The government introduced 4 new bills. One of those bills was introduced by Public Safety and Emergency Services Minister. That is Mike Ellis. The Public Safety and Emergency Services Statutes Amendment Act.
Today, I will be tabling Bill 49, the Public Safety Emergency Services Statute Amendment Act 2025, in the Legislative Assembly. If passed, the bill will make Alberta a safer place, ensuring our province is the best place to live, work, and of course raise a family. Today, we're bringing these amendments forward to address public safety on 4 different fronts. Number 1, to combat the theft of copper wire, catalytic converters, and other metals. Number 2, to improve how complex disasters and emergencies are handled and how we protect individual rights while maintaining public safety. Number 3, to flesh out the legislative framework for the Police Review Commission, which will be up and running by the end of this year. And number 4, to lay further groundwork for the new independent agency police service, which is another step forward to the full creation of the independence of the new police service.
There is Minister Mike Ellis. It is clear this bill will help improve public safety. That is certainly the goal, to improve public safety in a number of ways. Other bills introduced this week include Bill 50, the Municipal Affairs Statutes Amendment Act, introduced by Minister McIver, Bill 51, the Education Amendment Act, introduced by Minister Nicolaitis, and Bill 52, the Energy and Utilities Statute Amendment Act. And with that, we move on to the Minister of Environment and Protected Areas, because that minister has made a big move this week that will help a lot of Albertans. They're already talking about it. There is Minister Rebecca Schultz. Good day, Minister.
Hello, how are you?
Hey, I'm great. You know, they say that there's an old saying that whiskey is for drinking and water is for fighting over. And with that in mind, I don't know if you've ever heard that, but with that
I've
in
heard
mind,
it a time or two in the last couple of years of drought, I'll tell you that.
I bet you have. Well, listen, that leads me into this question I want to talk about. You've done some tremendous work on taking proactive action in the last year when it comes to making more water available in our province. One of those actions is cutting the red tape and the additional cost by removing that unnecessary 10% hold back on water transfers. Can you tell us more about the importance of this announcement?
Yeah, absolutely. This is something that was raised to me actually by a number of my MLA colleagues, but the first person to bring it to me was MLA Joe Scow. And so this really is a great announcement. It helps irrigators, it helps businesses, farmers, municipalities across Alberta to make more water available. So what would happen previously is anytime a water allocation was transferred from one user to another, which does happen in times of water sharing agreements and drought, where one user doesn't need their water and they transfer that allocation to somebody else. The department had kind of a required 10% holdback in some of these plans. And that was the go-to. So what we've done is given direction to my department to only take that if we absolutely, absolutely need it, which the parameters around that are very narrow and very specific. So essentially, we're pretty much getting rid of that 10% holdback unless like absolutely necessary. And so this will reduce costs for farmers and make more water sharing be able to happen in Alberta. I would say one example was last summer where a Southern Alberta farmer had that extra water. They couldn't transfer it to their neighbor who desperately needed that allocation without holding back thousands of cubic meters. We've had municipalities and irrigation districts see the same thing, that by the time they moved that allocation a couple of times, they'd lost up to 70% of their allocation. And so these new rules remove the red tape. It's far more common sense, and it will help people do the right thing, sharing that water with their neighbors and reducing costs.
I know you are not a fan of red tape. I've heard you speak about it with Minister Nally, who is working on it. The Premier chats about it. I think everybody in this government and your ministries are trying to deal with it in their own way. That said, the Ministry of Environment has has had a reputation over the years for being difficult to move things along. You're changing that, and there are other things that you were up to when it comes to making helping people get the water they need. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, this was something that we heard a lot about, especially when I came into this role. It's something that the Premier also put in my mandate letter, was reducing some of the red tape. And so, when we look at what does red tape mean? I always say it's lack of common sense in government. It holds up decisions, investment decisions, and erodes certainty in our approval processes. So these long wait times, it reduces economic development and limits water users' ability to actually adapt to changing circumstances. So over the last couple of years, we have seen Water Act license approvals. That timeline has declined by 57%. Or I guess alternatively, we've sped up by almost 60%, which is great. That includes a 25% improvement. So almost half of that was from last June alone. Yes, I think it's from last June alone. And so that has a significant impact when you look at projects that are wanting to move forward here in Alberta. There's a lot more certainty. We have approval decision timelines that we've put in place with the department. For low risk approvals, they have to be approved within 60 days. Medium risk, I believe, is 90 days. And I would say more challenging or complicated is probably a better way of describing higher risk decisions. Those still have to be made within 120 days. So when you look at that, any proponent or a municipality or a company or a business that is looking to operate in Alberta, looking for a decision from the government when it comes to water, there is some certainty there into how long that's going to take so that they can plan and make their investment decisions.
What a novel concept for sure. I know they're applauding that move. Minister, thanks for that. I want to switch gears a little bit. I always seem to ask you about the federal government when you're on the program. We've got a federal election campaign underway right now. Mark Carney, the Prime Minister, the Liberal leader, has been saying he wants to distance himself from some of the policies of the former Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, but yet he says he won't repeal Bill C-69, the No More Pipelines Act. So I spoke to the Premier about some of these policies, but I want your take on it too. What do you make of it, and what does that mean for Albertans if that is not changed?
I mean, I would say anybody who has heard Mark Carney talk about how he is different from their former leader, Justin Trudeau, or different from the government who brought in all of these problematic policies. And of course, we all know the list, Bill C-48, Bill C-69, the plastics ban, the oil and gas emissions cap, which we all know is a production cap, the carbon tax, you name it. Anybody who believes him when he says that he is different. First of all, I think they need to read his book. Because there is zero ideological difference between the radical views of folks like Stephen Guilbeault and Mark Carney. I would say it's the same old Liberals, it's the same ministers, it's the same cabinet, it's the same group of MPs that brought in all of these problematic policies. The only thing is, I actually think Mark Carney is more passionate about these issues than Justin Trudeau even was. I mean, talk about the Net Zero Banking Alliance. I mean, he was the champion and architect of that. And so, he's always been an activist and a climate zealot, clearly out of touch with the concerns of everyday Albertans and Canadians. And so, I would say when we've seen him, not here at home in Canada, but advocating around the world against fossil fuels. I think expecting him to do any different, I think would be a mistake on behalf of Canadians. And so he still supports the production cap, as you said, Bruce. He still supports Bill C-69, which the courts have ruled unconstitutional. And he says, you know what, we're going to keep it in place. I think that's a problem. He kept folks like Stephen Guilbeault in cabinet, again, after all of his failures and attacks on hardworking everyday Canadians and our major industries. And he again wanted to increase taxes on energy companies and others, which should be concerning for Canadians, especially with all of the trade and tariff uncertainty we're seeing. That this just isn't the time for that. And so, my opinion, I know that of my colleagues and certainly our premier, although I don't want to speak for them, is we should definitely, as Canadians, abandon this type of government. Obviously vote for a pro-growth, free market government would be my encouragement to Canadians, one that would help us increase our trade relationships and broaden those relationships around the world, and vote for change.
Well, I'm reminded as to why I always ask you about these things, because you never mince words. You give it to us straight. Appreciate that. One more question. You're very proud of Alberta's environmental record. The things that we do here don't get talked about a lot. Maybe they should. I think we were just voted number 1 in recycling in Canada, number 2 in North America. This despite the plastics ban that nobody voted for or wanted here in Alberta. That doesn't seem to make any sense. So these progressive policies, they don't achieve any result. Would you speak to that and maybe the environmental record that we do have?
Yeah, absolutely. You see the left run around talking about ridiculous policies like the Liberals' plastics ban. And then you look at where we're actually making a difference in places like Alberta, where it was a Conservative premier, the former Premier Peter Lougheed, who brought in a lot of these programs. Our recycling programs were then expanded under Ralph Klein before he was Premier, when he was the Environment Minister. And so we have long been a leader. I think sometimes that's why we don't talk about it, is because Albertans they do this work. And we are number 1 in Canada, number 2 in all of North America when it comes to recycling. We've done that without those ridiculous bans. It's a win. You get money back for your products, quick, easy, super accessible. I'm also a hockey mom, and so we all know what it's like to do a bottle drive. There is definitely a community benefit there as well. There's 200 bottle depots open across the province, and our approach is really focused on lowering costs, reducing waste, keeping this waste out of our landfills is a win where we can, and I think it's a lot more effective than the virtue signaling that we have seen from the left. And, I would say, I'm always very careful to say this isn't a government win. This is Albertans. This is Alberta residents who choose to recycle. It is Alberta companies and the bottle depots who do great work to make sure that they're getting that money back in Albertans' pockets. And so, honestly, that's a huge win.
Well said, and a shout out to all the moms and dads out there with their kids going door to door for those bottles. We've all done it. The Minister of Environment and Protected Areas, Rebecca Schultz, thanks as always.
Thanks so much, Bruce.
It is National Tourism Week, which is a great time to check in with our Minister of Sport and Tourism, and that is Minister Joseph Scow, to talk about the state of the tourism industry. Minister, never a dull moment in the Alberta Legislature. Thanks for taking a few minutes to sit with us.
You have that right. Never a dull moment.
Hey, let's begin here. Last year, you released Alberta's long-term provincial tourism strategy. It had an ambitious goal of reaching 25 billion in visitors spend by 2035. I'm sure you're tracking it. How do you feel about where we are to this point? Are we on track?
Yeah, last year we released the long term tourism strategy. It was to get us to $25 billion in visitor spending by 2035. Since we released that, we've seen fantastic numbers coming in, reaching 12.7 billion in 2023, a huge increase in the year prior, with also coming $3 billion of that of international visitor spend. So it means that our marketing efforts overseas is working. And 2024 numbers in the first three quarters are in, and it shows that we have it again, a 10% increase. And I'm very excited about what the final number is going to look like for last year.
So good. Probably a lot of Canadians staying home with the current political climate too, which doesn't hurt. This past year, Minister, has been a busy one. We know we had the introduction of the All Season Resorts Act. You called that a flagship piece of legislation. It'll help drive responsible, sustainable tourism in the province. How will the All Seasons Resorts Act in Alberta help us, and what can we see from it going forward?
When you're talking about our tourism goals of $25 billion, a lot of that is going to come from international visitors. And we have some incredible products that we have been developing over the last several years. In fact, we've been investing over $70 million, 60% of which is going into rural Alberta for visitors from around Alberta, around Canada, and around the world. But to really reach that pinnacle, reach that goal of 25 billion, we need to make sure we have much larger four-season resort and projects in place in the next coming years. So this legislation allows us to build resorts similar to what BC has done, but in an Alberta way. So we've taken their success, made it with a made in Alberta approach, and I think the sky's the limit. We have a very rich history, or rather, a very bright future ahead.
Minister, sport tourism is a growing market. People are talking more about it. You can hear about it more online. You can read about it. So I guess having a minister of tourism and sport in Alberta with you, we would be ahead of the curve. On that note, what role does sport tourism play in the plan to grow our tourism economy? And what are you expecting? What are you expecting to see ahead?
First, I would give credit to the Premier for seeing the value of putting sport and tourism together. The combination works very well, and we're seeing that especially with the sport tourism events that we've been able to attract in a very short period of time right here to Alberta. One of the really exciting ones that we have coming up that we've seen the first year of 3-year installment is the Canadian Finals Rodeo here in Edmonton. So we invested $4.5 million over 3 years to secure that bid, keep the CFR here in Alberta, and it's been a huge success in the first year of last year. We also bid on the World Juniors and some other Canada hockey events, including the Challenger, the rivalry between Team Canada and Team USA women's hockey, and the Hlinka Gretzky Cup. So these events draw tens of millions of dollars. The CFR, I think, saw over $50 million last year in its first year. And then World Junior is supposed to see, between the whole package with Canada Hockey, about $100 million. So it's just a massive win for us. It also gives us a chance to showcase Alberta's venues, our landscapes to visitors, coaches, family members, teammates, etc. But also they see it online. You see the B-roll footage and you see the beautiful landscapes that we have here in Alberta. People from abroad, they want to come here and visit. And those who come here for the event, they want to come back.
What a beautiful province. You really do, by the way, have the best ministry. And I think you know that, getting to travel around Alberta. Hey, listen, it's not just the landscapes and everything else, though, is it? It's the people. I mean, people love coming to Alberta, and I've heard you say that so many times. I've heard the Premier say that. It's National Tourism Week, so to those that make this industry thrive in Alberta, that work in it, that welcome the world, what's your message to them this week, Minister?
Well, I think you hit the nail really on the head there. We have beautiful landscapes. We have beautiful attractions. We have air access. We have incredible opportunities for entrepreneurs. But I think the best asset this province really has is the people. And it's those people who are driving this sector. And so without them, our tourism sector wouldn't be as successful as it has been in the past. And there is no future without Albertans driving this sector. And you talked about how great the Ministry of Tourism and Sport is. We all have a very important role to play in building the economy here in the province of Alberta. Whether you're Minister Horner in finance, or you're Minister Nicolaides in education, or you're me in tourism and sport, we all have an important role to play. And I've also made this case that I am the only Minister of Tourism and Sport, but my colleagues are all tourism adjacent. Because if we're looking to build products and looking to develop the economy, you have to make sure you have roads. That's Minister Dreesen. You have to make sure you have hospitals and acute care facilities. So that's Minister LaGrange. So you go down the list, and we all play a really important role, and we're all here to support each other. And so I think that's the best part about this team. And then, of course, the incredible leadership of our Premier.
Teamwork makes the dream work. Minister, I know
Sure
how much
does.
time you spend getting around this province to all the different events and lending your support. Thank you for that. Thank you for this. And we'll see you again soon.
Wonderful. Thank you. Take care.
All right. There is our Minister of Tourism and Sport, Joseph Scow, joining us on the Alberta Update. And that does it for this episode of the Alberta Update, a first-hand look at what's happening in your province. We bring you the ministers and the premier and tell you what your government's been up to. Certainly, you can find us on YouTube. You can find us on Rumble now, and most of the socials as well. We do this every week when the legislature is sitting. So until next week, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again soon.